No,
I'll train you.
no.
We'll be good. Give me
I'm
like a
too
year.
old.
We'll be a
Too
year
old.
and you'll be good.
No, I can't do it.
Come on, who said an old dog can't learn new tricks? Come on, give me a year and you'll
No.
be good. Meritorious.
Tourists.
Meritorious. I got it. We'll be good.
Tourists.
I'm almost tempted to have him come sit up front.
Yeah, we got to spot him when he comes in. He ran for mayor, is what my daughter said.
I don't know if he won or not.
He won his primary, but I don't know if he won his general.
That's tonight.
Oh, okay, so they've not had that yet.
Or they might have just had him. It says on Google. City and county elections. That just happened. It happened right before this.
Okay, so it's already happened.
It just happened now. That's Mark Oceanbaum. That's Mark Oceanbaum. Outstanding. I miss him so
Outstanding.
much.
Yeah, he was great, wasn't he?
I knew him before Boy State too. He was on my Eagle board review. He sat on my Eagle board review. Him, Drake Finland. I don't know if you remember him. He was a mascot for Tech and a math professor here.
All right, so we got. He is square in the center. It's gonna be easy for you to see, Reese.
Where?
It's perfect.
It's perfect. He's looking right at us too.
You couldn't have got a better seat.
You should text your wife and tell her what I'm doing.
What's wrong with it?
Text Amy. Or Miss McKenzie. I'll just say Mrs. McKenzie.
They have, they're counting the ballots, so we don't know.
McKenzie here.
Hey.
We're going to start this program. Is he here yet? Have you seen him?
Where's he at? I don't know.
Have you seen him?
I haven't seen him.
Go get him. Call the police.
I am here.
Does he need a police escort?
Somebody.
No.
Oh, I know. Hey,
Does he know about that?
Gary, did you hear about that?
What's that?
Somebody
Sit
called
down.
911.
Sit down.
Someone.
Yeah, sit
One
down.
of the delegates stopped at 911 to see if it worked.
Oh my God. Are you serious?
To see if it worked.
Oh Lord. We're at 911 today.
So Bernat, that's Sergeant Law. They were talking to me. I was doing work. I was not in the headquarters. I thought, I need to disappear right now.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if I need to smooth anything
No,
over,
but they'll call you. They'll call you. We just want to alert you.
I tell them we'll give them a talking
Were
to.
you in there when they went down? Oh, they're talking. It's hopefully controlled each time they tell you. We just want to get ahead of it.
Have we had, have they figured out, usually they figure out the Wi-Fi password. Usually that's happening.
Can you see his
I don't
face in
know.
there?
We don't know what the hell.
No, okay.
Can you see his face in there?
Who, Reese?
Yeah.
I can. I see
You, like sitting there?
oldest daughter, boyfriend.
Oh,
So,
play it cool.
I'm planning.
You know his face is gonna turn straight, right?
I think he ran for mayor. I don't know.
Play it cool.
No. I'm gonna say your best. Talk. Even when you shouldn't supposed to. Even when you aren't supposed to.
That's right.
That's true.
The Braves are tied. Are they really? With they're playing Pittsburgh, aren't they? They lost to Washington yesterday, I think it was, but they took the series. They took, you know. Preds is now, isn't it? Do you know? Do you have a score on it? That's a big deal.
Somebody said I can turn my phone and stream it while you were talking on the projector. I laughed and said,
My kids I always have to nail hello Sam and Brooke. That's how I always start. It's a tradition.
I'm trying to think, could we get Reese? I'm trying to think throughout the week, could we get Reese to come up with something?
2-0 Braves. Predators up. That's what quarter? First, second, first. It's still pretty good. Those games too usually wins it. Yeah, I think they're up. Yeah, let's get started.
Steve. For tonight's speaker, I'd like to read a little bio. He graduated from Tennessee Tech with a degree in criminal justice and received his JD degree from the University of Memphis. Served 15 years as a prosecutor, reaching the position of deputy district attorney, supervising major felony prosecutions. Judge McKenzie received the Distinguished Career Award from the Exchange Club / Stevens Club and the Everyday Hero Award from the Child Advocacy Center for his dedication to the fight against child abuse. In 2009, Judge McKenzie deployed to Iraq in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom, receiving the Meritorious Service Medal for his work there. In 2014, Judge McKenzie was elected to the bench. He has been married to his beautiful wife, Amy, and his 2 daughters, Sammy and Brooke, and 1 son, Ira. Without further ado, Criminal Court Judge Gary McKenzie.
All right, so listen up. I've got a tradition that I do. This will be the 3rd year that I do it. And so my daughters, Samantha and Brooklyn, are at home right now, and we live stream, so they always watch the live stream throughout the week, and so they're watching tonight. So when I count to 3, I'm going to ask all of you to say, hello, Sammy and Brooke, okay? 1, 2, 3. Hello, Sammy and Brooke. All right. I like to embarrass them. All right, at ease, listen up. I like to embarrass them as much as I possibly can. So, okay, I appreciate that intro. Thank you very much for that. My wife's listening. I made sure that beautiful was put in there so that it could score me a little extra points tonight. All right, so, oh, no, hey, keep it, listen, keep it cool, all right? Listen up. We're going to talk tonight about leadership qualities. Can everybody hear me? Okay, all right. Okay, I want to talk about a life of service and qualities of a leader. What does it mean to be a leader? All of you here tonight are supposed to be the future leaders of our state. So I want to tell you a little bit now. This information I'm passing along is the type of information that came to me from people that I looked up to, people that were leaders in my community, my state, people who were a heavy influence on me. So I want to share some of this knowledge and pass it along the way. All right, so qualities, leadership qualities. If my clicker can work. Okay, name some American leaders. Now, I don't need everybody yelling at once, but tell me, this front row right here, tell me some American leaders. When you think about leaders that this country's had, give me some names. Right here. Martin Luther King. Okay, Martin Luther King was the name, all right? Okay, over here, this front row right here, give me another leader, American leader. Who do you think of? Theodore Roosevelt. Right over here. Ulysses S. Grant. All right, that's good. Okay, some of these were named, some of them maybe not. Abraham Lincoln, okay? President during the time of the Civil War, a great divide in the country. Imagine what it must have been like to be the president during that time frame as the country is trying to rip itself apart. Franklin Roosevelt, World War II, president at a time of the Great War. Imagine the responsibility that was on his shoulders. Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King led the civil rights movement in this country. The adversity that he faced during that time frame, he could have easily not picked up that mantle and led that movement. He could have easily let somebody else do it. Do you think it was popular what he did when he picked that up and fought for civil rights? No, it was not. So what traits do Lincoln, Roosevelt, and King have in common? What traits? Well, good character, respectful. Okay? Everybody agree with that? Good communicator. The ability to move individuals, the ability to take people and tell them ideas that you believe in and move them with your words. Speaking to them because you had a passion for what you believed in. And uniting countries, uniting people to fight for a common cause. Good communicator. Confident. When they spoke, when those men spoke, the reason they were confident, in my opinion, is because they truly believed in what they were saying. Truly believed. They made the right decisions regardless of popular opinion. Imagine the decisions that they made to go to war, leading in the civil rights movement. Those decisions were not made because it gained them friends. Absolutely not. But it was the right decision to make, and it was the right decision to right decisions to do. But did you know that Martin Luther King and Abraham Lincoln both suffered from depression? Both of those leaders suffered from depression. FDR suffered from polio and lost his ability to walk. Those are some traits that they share in common, is that those great leaders faced adversity. Those leaders had to deal with problems just like you do, just like anybody does. But what they were able to do was to rise above that. They overcame difficult circumstances to succeed. Now, that is a trait. The ability to overcome adversity, and I guarantee you, in your life, you will have adversity. There's one thing I know for sure, is that there will be something that happens to you along the way that you did not anticipate and you did not plan for. And it will set you back. And you will have to dig deep to figure out if you're going to get back up and continue moving forward. That is a trait. It's called resiliency. Resiliency is one of the most important characteristics of being a leader, being successful. So, define resiliency. What does resiliency mean? What is a definition for resiliency? The second row, not the first, the second row. You gentlemen, anybody, resiliency. Can you define it? There's a hand about to go up. Go ahead, take a shot at it. Okay, stand up and say it. Not giving up, okay? And you'll have to forgive me with my clicker tonight. Okay. Resiliency is the ability to grow and thrive in the face of challenge and bounce back, not giving up. Bounce back from adversity. There's a poem. Nelson Mandela. How many people, show of hands, know Nelson Mandela? You should have heard of him. Everybody. Okay. Nelson Mandela, tell me, he had some adversity, obviously, correct? Everybody agrees. He was in prison for many, many years before he became the president of his nation, right? And so in that time, one of the poems that he would listen to and read and read it in his mind over and over while he was in that dark cell. And I want you to imagine right now what kind of cell he was in. Dark, cold cell for many years. And the term, or the poem's name was Invictus. Now, there was a movie, actually, I don't know how many people have seen the movie, Invictus, about the rugby team, had Matt Damon in it. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? The name of that movie comes off of the poem that Nelson Mandela would read and think of to give himself the ability to go forward. Out of the night that covers me, black as the pit from pole to pole, I think whatever gods may be for my unconquerable soul. In the fell clutch of circumstance, I have not winced nor cried aloud. Under the bludgeoning of chance, my head is bloodied but unbowed. Beyond this place of wrath and tears looms but the horror of the shade. And yet the menace of the years finds and shall find me unafraid. It matters not how straight the gate, how charged with punishments the scrolls, for I am the master of my fate, I am the captain of my soul. To me, that poem is about resiliency. That poem is about the ability to carry on. Adam Minchik was a Polish activist, and he opposed communism in Poland and fought for elections because he believed, such as I do, that individuals have the right to choose who governs them. And he has a quote that I really like, and I use it day to day whenever I find myself, like earlier today, I find myself on the bench having to make difficult decisions. In the life of every honorable man comes a difficult moment when the simple statement that this is black and this is white requires paying a high price. I agree with that. Not only will you face adversity, but there will come a time in your life where you will be challenged to take a position that will come at great price, but it will be the right thing to do. Knowing the right thing to do is the easy part. It's having the strength to do it. More often than not, we know what the right thing is to do, but it's difficult sometimes because it comes at a high price. Keys to being resilient: self-aware, know your strengths and limitations. I tell you, whenever I was in the prosecutor's office, one of the things that was my strength was a closing argument. That is, like I'm doing up here, when I was able to get in front of a jury and talk to them about my case and try to move them in the direction that I wanted to move them in. That was my strength. Cross-examination, those things, those were my strengths. But sometimes research was not necessarily my strong suit. I was a little better at being on my feet than necessarily digging into the law books. And so I understood that was one of my weaknesses. And so I got help from those that were talented at that to teach me better ways to do the research. I partnered with prosecutors when we were trying homicide cases or other type cases. I partnered with prosecutors that did a really good job with research and providing me with the materials I needed to make the arguments in a courtroom. And it worked really well for me. But that's because I understood where I fell short. That is an important characteristic of a leader. Self-regulation. Regulate impulses and emotion. I find that if a decision that's made during the heat of the moment, sometimes you reflect on it and you realize maybe it wasn't the best decision. And we've all done that, okay? But I challenge you when you go forward for you to think before you act. That if you find yourself driven by emotion in making a big decision, maybe you don't need to make that decision right away. Maybe you need to reflect on it. More often than not, I can remember several times being in a courtroom and arguing, and I was very passionate about what I was arguing about. And the judge ruled against me, which happens, absolutely happens. And so I was angry. Oh, I can't believe that. I just don't agree with that decision. But you know, I found that the next day, when I really thought about it, I thought, you know, that judge was right. He was right. I was a little overpassionate about my argument, and reflecting on it with a cool head, more often than not, the judge was right. Self-regulation. Optimism. Avoid the negativity bias. There is a bias, a negativity bias. That is to always believe the worst case scenario. When you were packing and coming to Boise State, I bet going through your mind was this, I don't know, I'm nervous, they're going to make me do this or that, I'm not sure if I want to do this, and you're probably going through your mind giving yourself the absolute worst case scenario. But then, when you really get to it, more often than not, it's nowhere near what you thought it would be. You can change the world that you live in. I truly believe that one person can be the catalyst to change the world. And I'm going to give you some examples of individuals who have done that. Connections. You must be able to rely on others when you are in need. No man is an island. I guarantee you that you are all here tonight, but it's not because of just you. There are people back home who believe in you. Let me ask, are there any delegates from Meigs County, Tennessee? Any delegates? Stand up. What's your name? Maurice, was it McDonald? Okay. And Meigs County, correct? All right, who was in the back? What's the name? Hunter James. I graduated from Meigs County High School. I was born and raised in Meigs County High School. Meigs County has 10,000 people in it, right? 10,000 people in Meigs County. My father was a land surveyor. I did not come from money. I did not come from wealth. I worked my way through school. I paid my way through school. I came here and moved here with my wife and kids from Little Meigs County. I started my career here. I ran for office in 7 counties in 250,000 population, and I won that election, and I come from Meigs County, Tennessee. But I did not do that. You hear me say I, but I did not do that, gentlemen. The people in Meigs County, Tennessee helped me get on this stage today. That small town and those values that they taught me is the reason that I'm here tonight. You can have a seat. If it was not for the teachers that I had, if it was not for the parents that I had, if it was not for the good choices and friends that I had, the wife that I have, if it was not for those things, gentlemen, I would not be here tonight. If it was not for the many victims of cases that I had prosecuted who went out over those 7 counties and asked people to vote for me, if it was not for them, I would not be here tonight. And so that victory, it's not my victory. Your victory in being here tonight is not your victory. It's shared amongst all those people. And don't you ever forget that. And don't you ever forget where you came from. Those connections is what makes you who you are. And you will find that strength in numbers. There is definitely strength in numbers. Now, rigid or flexible is the question. Is the building that is built firm, not to move, stronger than the building that is built to sway? No, it's not. Any architect will tell you that a skyscraper that sets up, that is built unable to move, is more likely to fall. What does a tree look like in a storm? It sways. A tree in a storm that survives the storm is one that moves. And that, gentlemen, is what we're talking about. Adversity is the ability to adapt and overcome. Now, that's something that was taught to me in the military and in the Army. That was a saying that we had. Adapt and overcome. Bounce back. Can one person change the world? Okay, I want to give you a story. True story. I was prosecuting a case, and there was a little boy, and he was an 8-year-old little boy. And that 8-year-old little boy had to come in and testify in a courtroom, not too dissimilar from this. And he had to walk through the back doors of a courtroom, much like walking through these double doors. And he had to walk down a long aisle, and he had to get up on a witness stand, and he had to sit in a room where another man sat, and he had described things that I'm not going to go into and I'm not going to talk about tonight. But he had described things that was very difficult for an 8-year-old boy to do. And he had to do that in front of 12, 14 strangers that were on the jury. And the individual that was charged with that crime had committed same acts against other people in multiple states. And I tried that case, and that little boy comes in, and he gets on the witness stand, and he takes a deep breath, and he summons up the courage that I don't think I had. That as a grown man, I don't know that I had that courage. And he leans into the microphone, and he testifies. And that jury convicted that individual, and rightfully so. And that man was sent away for many, many years and will never get out of jail again. And there's no doubt in my mind that that individual will never abuse or harm a child again as long as he lives. And if that 8-year-old little boy doesn't take that witness stand in that courtroom, if that 8-year-old little boy does not get up there and summon that courage up, then that individual walks out of there. And if that happens, there certainly will be another victim in the future. That child absolutely changed the lives of many people who will never know him, who will never think him. But he certainly changed the world that we live in. Changing the world doesn't mean that you create some new device that millions of people use. It can be as simple as that. I really like this story, and this is a story that I really, and I say story, but this is an individual that you should know. You should know this man right here, and you should understand what he did. And we should never forget who this is. Captain Billy Burke was 46 years old. He was part of Engine 21 with the New York Fire Department. He was working on September 11th. He was summoned in and went and responded to the North Tower. The North Tower was hit first. The South Tower was hit second. And so Captain Billy Burke made his way into the North Tower with his men, and they ascended the steps up that tower. Now, the South Tower, as Captain Burke is in the North Tower, the South Tower gets hit and then falls. And when it does that, the North Tower that Captain Burke is in begins to sway. And Captain Burke knows at that very moment, he understands that that tower he's in, which was hit first, by the way, is only a matter of time before it goes down. He understands that. He most surely knows that that's what's going to happen. He is in that tower, and there are civilians. He orders his men, leave. But there are civilians that are left there in the room where him and his men are at, one of them in a wheelchair. 2 civilians, one in a wheelchair. And he knows that there's no way with the elevators out that the man in the wheelchair and the other injured civilian gets out of that tower. He knows that. He understands that. And he also knows that the men that are serving with him that took that oath to be a firefighter, that he understands that they're not going to leave civilians behind unless somebody stays behind. He knows that. And so he looks at all of his men and says, I will stay with the civilians, and he sends them out. He sends them out of the tower, and they begin to leave, hitting the stairs, getting out of there, and getting out of harm's way. As this is happening, and it's all developing, he is on the phone with his girlfriend, and he's speaking to her about where he's at, and she is pleading with him. She is saying, I'm watching this on the television, and you've got to get out of there. Why don't you leave? And he says, I'm here, I'm in the tower, but why don't you leave? Why don't you get out? It's obviously going to fall. And she's pleading with him to leave. And do you know what he tells her? When she says, why won't you leave? Do you know what his words are? His last words to her are. His last words to her, this is what I do. This is what I do. He died in the tower that day with the 2 civilians that he was staying behind with, and he understood that that's what was going to happen. But the men that lived have families now, have kids, have children. Those people live. They go on about their lives. His actions changed the world that we live in today. And so his story is important to me because I often wonder, what would I do in that moment of truth? Would I throw myself in the breach? Would I sacrifice myself? That no one really knows what they would do, but I'd like to think that I would. Billy Burke changed the world that we live in. My wife and children went to New York, and I asked them, recently they were on a trip, and I asked them because it was important to me. I have yet to make it to the 9/11 memorial, and his name is inscribed in there, and I asked them to make a copy. You can get the paper and make a copy of the name there. You can take a pencil and trace and outline it, and they did that for me, and now that hangs on the wall in my house. I want to tell you about another individual that changed the world. But you're going to have to go back in time to January 13th of 1982. I doubt anybody in this room was alive. I was. But in January 13 of 1982, in Washington, Air Florida Flight 90 takes off from Washington National. And seconds later, because of ice that had built up on the wings and improper icing or de-icing procedures, the ice that builds up on the wings causes the airplane to not be able to maintain lift because of the deformity of the wings with the ice on it. And so seconds after takeoff, it impacts the 14th Street Bridge and it lands in the icy Potomac River. When that happens, 6 passengers are still alive. So it crashes into the river and there are 6 passengers. I remember watching this on television as this was unfolding. And so helicopter was sent out to help these 6 people because in that icy water, you're not going to last long. You're going to succumb to hypothermia, and it's just a matter of time. One survivor was a 46-year-old man named Arlen D. Williams, Jr. And let me tell you his story. Each time the lifeline was dropped to him from the helicopter, he passed it to another survivor. Each time that they came back for him and they dropped the lifeline, he gave it to another individual, understanding certainly what his circumstances were, but he gave that to another individual. This is a picture of him. When the helicopter finally returned back after getting the other individuals back for him, the last survivor, he was not there. He did not make it. The 14th Street Bridge is now called, if you go over that today, it's called Arlen D. Williams, Jr. Memorial Bridge. Those 6 survivors went on and lived, had children. Those children probably having children now. This world is a different place, and different people live in it today because of the sacrifice that this man gave in that cold water back in 1983. His story shouldn't be forgotten. We should think of those when we look for inspiration in making the right decision. How many people have heard the story of the starfish? Several people have. I'll tell you the story because I like this story because sometimes it's very difficult. It's not my story. I was at a child abuse prosecution in Oregon, and there was a speaker that came in. And sometimes, regardless of what you're doing in the legal career, whether you're on the prosecution or the defense side, and let me tell you, they're both honorable sides to be on. They are. And no matter which side you're on, sometimes you find yourself really down, wondering, am I making a difference? Is this really worth the fight? It just seems like there's so much. You know, I thought I just, the case after case, and no matter what I do, I don't know that I'm really making a difference. But there was this lady was a prosecutor actually from Alaska. She was a wonderful speaker, and she came in and she told the story, and I'd never heard the story. And so the story goes something like this. There was a man running down a beach, and he was on vacation. He's running down the beach. And as he's approaching, he sees this little girl. She's probably 9 or 10 years old. And he sees her at some distance, and she's throwing something into the ocean. He's wondering, what's she doing? So as he gets closer, he starts seeing that there's just all of these starfish that have washed up on the beach, somewhat like this, just starfish everywhere. And the little girl is picking up starfish, and she's throwing it out into the ocean to save them. And as he runs by, he says, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? It doesn't make, you can't possibly save them all. You can't possibly get them all back into the ocean. Why? I don't understand. It's, you know, you're wasting your time, little girl. Why? And she picks up another starfish and she looks at him and she holds it up and says, because it matters to this one. That's why I'm doing it, because it matters to this one. And she continues to do that. And next thing you know, a couple of other individuals that are on that beach see her, and they decide to help her. And then more people come to help. And then next thing you know, you've got a whole community out there picking up starfish, and the whole community gets every one of the starfish off the beach. And it all started because of that one little girl. Because if you lead, people will follow your lead. And how you behave, people will behave. If they see a leader, they will follow. Behave like that leader. One person can change the world. That is the story of the starfish. Now, how do you measure success? How do you measure it? Is it the size of your bank account? I mean, I hope not, because if it is, I'm not too successful. But is it the size of your bank account? No, it's not. It's not the size of your bank account. It's absolutely not. Is it measured by your title? No, it's not. It's not. Whether it's an attorney, whether it's a doctor, that in and of itself, I'm not saying that you shouldn't aspire to be those things. You absolutely should. But success in this life, in my opinion, is not measured by those things. My father, who I lost 10 years ago, in June, it'll be 10 years, he had a saying, and he told me that at the end of your life, how you truly will be measured will be by how many lives you've touched in a positive way. Because when we are all called to meet our Maker, it will not be the bank account or the title or the degrees. It won't be that. But rather it will be, what did you do on this earth the years that you lived, and what good did you do? I believe he's right, and I think that's how people are measured. So what can you do to lead and serve? So how do I serve? Well, I have a passion for seeking justice. I dedicated my career to it. I like the idea of the system we live in. I like the idea that if you're wronged, there is some justice to it, regardless of how it is that you're wronged. I stay informed on issues that are important to my community. It's going to affect the community that my children live in, so I stay up to date on those. I look for ways that I can volunteer for good causes, Rotary, American Legion. We have a Veterans Treatment Court that I help get kicked off the ground to help individual veterans that come back with PTSD issues, possibly getting them help. Some of these individuals end up making mistakes and they come into the court system, and if there's some way, if anybody deserves a second chance, the people who wore the uniform, in my opinion, do. So that is some way that I serve. So as a future leader asks, what can I do to serve? After this week, what can you do? You know, if you go home after this week and all these things and these great speakers you're hearing talk to you and they give you all these tools and you forget about them, I think you'll be doing yourself and your state a disservice. So what can you do? Be resilient, number one. Find your passion and live for it. What is your passion? You know, I don't consider what I do work. I mean, it's obviously a job, but I really don't consider that. I bet you if you ask other individuals in the room, I bet if you asked Judge Maddox if he thought his service in his legal career was at work, I bet he'd say it wasn't. I bet he'd say it was his passion. It was what he lived for, and it was, you know, find your passion. If you do that and you connect with it, you'll be successful at it, whatever that may be. It may be in the arts, it may be, who knows, but find your passion and live for it. Get involved in your community and make a positive change. Do what you can do. Volunteer for good causes. Plan for your future. Make a plan and execute it, right? Just like you're doing here this week. You're learning that. Make a plan for your future. Those are important things for you to do, but always believe that you can make a difference. Always believe. Think of those stories that I told you about and remember that you can be the change. Now, this is my passion and this is why I serve. These are my daughters and my son Ira, and all I want to do in life is when I leave here, I want to leave this world a little bit better off than whenever I found it. And as long as I can do that, then I feel like I will have done my job. And so that is why I do what I do. Now, this is my information. That is my office phone number, and that is my email address. And I have had emails from other delegates who have moved on, who've stayed in touch with me, who've talked to me about decisions maybe that they're going to make. Maybe they want to go to law school or maybe something else. But anyway, you are more than welcome to take this down, and if you have anything that you've got a question about, anything I talked about or anything about Boise State or any decision you're trying to make, then give me a call, shoot me an email. I don't mind. If I can help you in any way, and I bet your counselors have told you this too, and if we can help you in any way along your path, we certainly will do that. So please, feel free. Email is going to be the best way, by the way, to get in touch with me. Phone number, maybe not so much. We have a lot of calls coming in and out of the office, but I've got just a little bit of time, and I normally open it up to some question or answer at the end of it. And so I don't mind. You can ask me a question about anything we've talked about. You can ask me any question that you want. Some I may not answer, but usually it's good questions. So I don't know if we've got a microphone, maybe, if they want to. But if you've got a question, what I'd ask you to do is if you want to come out into the aisleway and come down here, we've got 2 aisles maybe, and maybe we can get, we don't have too long for one, but we can get you to a microphone and you can ask any questions that we have. Just line up in the straight line. But I can't answer them if I can't hear. So, all right, at ease, everybody. Okay, yes, sir. Tell me first, where are you from?
I'm from Ray County, Tennessee.
I know Ray County well. It's across the river from where I was born and raised. But what's your question?
Did you go to college, and how many years?
I went to college here at Tennessee Tech, which is I am a product of Tennessee Tech, and I got to tell you, great school. I could not have done as well in law school if it wasn't for Tennessee Tech setting me up for success. So I went here for 4 years, got my undergrad degree, and then I ended up at University of Memphis for 3 years, passed the bar exam, became a licensed attorney, and then the rest is history. So from here to the University of Memphis. But good school here. Thank you. Okay. Yes, sir.
First of all, I'd like to start off, thank you for coming down here and talking to us. It's meant a lot to us. But my name's Connor Wood, and I come from West Tennessee.
Okay.
But my question is, over the years of you being a criminal court judge, have you ever had to represent, say, a criminal that you know has done wrong, but you still have to support him?
Have to represent them.
Yeah.
Okay. So the question, if you didn't hear, is have I ever had to represent somebody who is accused of a crime? Well, obviously as a judge, we don't do that. As a prosecutor, I represented the state of Tennessee who was bringing charges on behalf of the state or the victim. But as I was a trial defense attorney in the military, and yes, I represented people who were accused of crimes in the military. And so the way that, and yes, I was able to do that, and the reason I was able to do that is because listen, the defense attorney side to the equation is they are protecting the constitutional rights of that individual. And each one of you have constitutional rights. And if we don't protect those, if we allow the state or the government to run over those rights, then what good is that document? Right? So I want you to understand that although my career was mainly as a prosecutor, that does not mean that a career as a defense attorney has some less honor about it. That's not true at all. In some respects, they're two sides of the same coin. Our system working together, that is where we get justice. So without either side of that, there's not. So that's how I'm able to do that, or was able to do it. Yes, Mr. Jones.
Hey, my name is Reese. I'm from Cookeville.
Yes.
What was the hardest thing about running for judge?
The hardest thing was probably eating so much barbecue. Judge Maddox laughs. We both ran for offices that were contested, and we had opponents, so eating a lot of barbecue, shaking a lot of hands, and traveling just endlessly around the 7 counties. But at the same time, I was blessed by it because I got to know such good people in the community in the area I lived. So that was my hardest part. Yes.
I just want to say thank you for being here. My name is Benji. I'm from Roane County, Tennessee.
Okay. Roane County.
My question is, do you have any advice for someone that wants to run for like Supreme Court Justice in the future, like what it takes to get there? And by the way, I'm running here. Vote for me. Don't be stingy. Vote Benji. But yeah, I just want to.
Okay. Do you mean like Supreme Court here in Boise State?
Here at Boise State, and then also.
Okay. So you don't run for Supreme Court in the state of Tennessee. What you do run for trial judges, which is what I am. And then from that point forward, we have an appointment process, which I agree with, and the way that it's set up right now works really well. And so that's how you kind of get to the Supreme Court. Most Supreme Court justices come from trial courts and appellate courts. Here, my advice would be, I would be going around shaking every single hand in this room and personally asking them for their vote. I mean, that's the bottom line. In running for election, if you're sincere, pressing the flesh, as we call it, getting out there and asking people for their vote, that seems to work. So I don't know.
Well, I had known about the appointing. I didn't mean like running for
Okay,
Supreme Court.
I got you.
There,
Sure.
I meant,
Okay,
like,
I understand.
Getting up to it.
I understand. Okay.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
But I would get out there and just shake hands.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
I don't really have a question. I just want to add something to what you said.
Okay.
When he says plan your future, plan it the way that God wants you to plan it. Don't put God first in your life.
I'm Grayson Rogers. I come from right here in Cookeville, and when I first
Hold on.
decided to go to college, my first interest was, in fact, law and being a courtroom lawyer. And just out of curiosity, you said you've played both the prosecutor and the defendant.
defense.
Sorry, I forgot what it's called. I would like to know which side you prefer playing, which is your preferred poison.
Poison. You know, I don't know. Obviously, the prosecution I was more comfortable with because that was the thing that I did like about being a prosecutor on the state level was that I did have some discretion, meaning that if I ever felt like the individual that was charged was not guilty or the evidence wasn't there, I was able to just dismiss it and just say I'm not prosecuting it. So there was a little more discretion there as a prosecutor, and as a defense attorney, you're probably, you're sort of stuck with what the facts are representing the individual. So it seemed to me like being the prosecutor, you had a little more flexibility, and at times could probably, I don't know, kind of help the job be a little easier to deal with. So, I guess I preferred the prosecution side, but for those reasons. Arguing in the courtroom is very similar no matter what side you're on, so that's probably the best answer I have.
Could I ask one more question before I leave?
Sure.
How does being a prosecutor and someone protecting the defendant how would that interfere with a sense of religion or morality?
Okay.
Because that was my biggest concern when going into the field of law.
Okay. Well, you shouldn't quote Bible verses if you can't quote the actual verse, and I apologize because it's a blank right now, but render unto Caesar, right? The idea is that it's not my job to judge, not as a judge or a prosecutor or anything, it's not my job to judge anybody as a human being or their worth. That's a higher power. But what my job is to do is to make sure that our country and what we believe in, that those principles endure. And I don't see a conflict with what you're doing from a standpoint of our legal system into a religious system. I don't see a conflict there because the religious judging and what happens to you is something that's a much higher power than any court that we have. So that is what helps me reconcile the two things.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right. We got maybe just a little bit more time. We're getting close, but go ahead.
What was the main factor that sparked your interest in becoming a criminal court justice and, making the jump from a defense attorney or a prosecutor?
Prosecutor to the bench.
Or prosecutor, yes, sir.
I guess I had done the job as prosecutor for several years, and I had the luxury of being in front of amazing judges in this judicial district, and so to me, I just felt like it was a natural progression that I understood my area of the law, and I had prosecuted murders to you name it, and I'd done it. And so I felt like that I could continue to serve in the level of the judgeship, because the decisions a judge makes are extremely important, because if the judge makes the wrong decision, they're overturned on appeal, and people have to try cases all over again. And so it's important that the people you put in those positions have a firm grasp on the law that they're going to be setting over. And I felt like that we had a judge that was retiring, that had been on the bench for many years and was a wonderful judge. And I just felt like we needed somebody on that bench that understood and could, make decisions and knew the law. And so it was just kind of a natural progression that it was kind of my time, I guess you'd say. So anyway, that's why.
Thank you.
Okay.
My name is Matthew Nicholson. Next year, like probably all of us, I will be attending some form of college, and I hope to pursue a career in law. And I was wondering, what would you recommend as good majors to go after in order to lead into a field in law?
Gosh. Of course, I'd say go to tech, number one, but I'm a little biased. But listen, I don't know that there's any one major that works for law. I had individuals that did English in my law school class, criminal justice majors, political science majors, history majors. So I don't know that you can go wrong there, but I certainly would try to go into something that lends itself to the practice. English, your writing, your ability to communicate, things of that nature. History, there's a lot of history in law. So I think those majors I kind of named are some that you see more often than not. I don't know that if you go into foreign language and German is going to necessarily translate to law school. So I think, about any kind of major that has to do with those types of topics, you're going to be fine. Okay? Thank you. Good question. Yes.
Hello, my name is John David Manier, and then I'm here from Cookeville, Tennessee. And I noticed that one of the major American leaders that you noted in your presentation was Martin Luther King Jr.
Yes.
Now, one of the works he quoted the most was Civil Disobedience by Henry David Thoreau. And I was wondering if in your prolific career in the judiciary system, have you ever been met with any cases that you believed in which the law conflicted with your higher moral standings?
Sure. That's a good question, okay? That is a good question. All right, so let me answer the question. I got elected and I took an oath that I would uphold the law in Tennessee. And I truly believe this, okay? And the law, we all have a right to self-governance. That is that we elect people to represent us. You had some earlier today. And they go to Nashville and they write the laws. Now, I do not always agree with the laws that they write, okay? But it is my right to go out and to politic for change of those laws or politic for somebody who believes what I believe. And I believe there's a contract that we have with this government. And that contract is that if you participate, you have the right to participate, to go out and try to get those people elected. But we are a democracy and you have to respect the laws. So I took that oath and the laws that are written, I have to follow by that oath. I may not agree, and I don't agree. There are a lot that I don't agree with, okay? But I can work to change those, but as a judge, it is not my job to create law. It's not my job to write law. It is my job to just interpret it in the manner that the legislature set it forward. So that's just my personal belief. So that is how I'm able to do what I do, even if I don't necessarily agree with it. If you don't agree with the laws, work to change them. That's my belief. That's a good question. It's a good question.
My name is Michael Cornett. I'm from Signal Mountain, Tennessee. And I was just wondering, was there any point when you were, first applying to law school or something where you doubted that you were going on the right path in your life? And if so, what did you do to, fix that?
Well, when I first applied to law school, the truth is, whenever I was going to Tech, I thought I was going to want to go into the FBI. I had, watched movies and thought, wow, I'm sure it's much more boring the day-to-day than what the movies, but I thought FBI would be a great career, and I had a family member that was an FBI agent. And so that was actually what I wanted to do, and at the time, you had to be a licensed attorney. To get into the FBI, you had to be a licensed attorney and accountant, or have a 4-year degree plus 4 years degree of law, 4-year experience in law enforcement. And so I actually did not go to law school to end up where I am right now. So I guess to answer your question, I never doubted that I wanted to do what I'm doing, but I did have as I got older, I had different opinions. I learned of what it was like to be a prosecutor, what it was like to be a trial attorney, and that helped kind of focus me in the direction I am. So I don't think I ever really doubted what I wanted to do, but once you get into the law, there's so many areas of it that you don't hesitate to re-examine your beliefs about what it is and why it is that you want to go to law school or whatever it may be. Don't hesitate to do that. There's nothing wrong with that at all, okay? Okay, thank you. I think maybe one more and we got to go. I think we're close to time. I don't have my watch is a little fast. I can look at my phone real quick, but I think I've got like 1 minute.
That guy. I'm Alex Cruz, and I'm from Putnam County, so I'm very close to here.
Putnam County.
Previously in your presentation, you mentioned how, as a prosecutor, you were sort of overcome with emotion at some points, and the verdict deemed by the judge you thought was incorrect at the time, and then later on, once everything's settled, you realized that he was actually correct. As a judge now, what changed from being a prosecutor to a judge so now that you can remain calm and collected throughout the entire trial to make the most
Okay.
accurate decision?
Well, I think that the role of the judge is a little more detached in the sense that when you're a prosecutor and you're dealing with people, you're dealing with people. You are getting to know them. They're in your office. They're meeting with you. And this happens on the defense side too. You're representing somebody. You know their family. So you get sort of a personal, as much as you try not to, you get a personal relationship with those individuals. So you get very passionate about it. And as a judge, there is a detachment there where you don't know the family. You don't know the people. And that's good. That's the way it's designed to be, and that's the way we want it to be, because it allows for the judge to have a calmer reflection of what to do. When you're down on the floor, as we call it, there's more emotion going on. But when you're on the bench, there's just, by the nature of the job itself, it allows for you to be more detached. So I think the transition between being a trial attorney up to the bench takes just a little bit of time, but ultimately just the nature of it lends itself to allow you to be more detached. Okay. Guys, I think that's it. I don't know where's Steve at, if he wants to come up and take charge, but
Let's give a round of applause.
Appreciate it. I appreciate it, guys. Appreciate it.